The entire family is capable of perceiving the innermost thoughts of my cousin. When my mother brought her home, she sweetly addressed my elder cousin, while internally she mused. My elder cousin has always resented aunt and uncle for their perpetual preoccupation with business, neglecting her in the process. In retaliation, she deliberately ruined aunt's stockings and deleted uncle's documents. Now that I have taken residence here, I must certainly offer my elder cousin some guidance as a means of repaying aunt and uncle for their kindness in adopting me. She resorted to her old tricks, unaware that I had been reborn. This time, I too could hear her thoughts as if I were family. Susu, your uncle and aunt have been involved in a car accident, and from now on, Meow Meow will stay with us. You must treat her as if she were your own sister, do you understand? My mother pointed at the timid Song Meow as she spoke to me. Before I could utter a word, Song Meow's voice, faint as a mosquito's, barely managed to call out elder cousin. Both obedient and timid, she resembled a delicate fawn, seemingly harmless. Yet her thoughts were far from innocent. She was busy plotting against me. Cousin has always expressed disdain for aunt and uncle, who are perpetually engrossed in their business, neglecting her in the process. In retaliation, she deliberately damages aunt's stockings and deletes uncle's files. Now that I have moved in, I am determined to counsel cousin earnestly, as a means to repay the kindness of aunt and uncle for their nurturing. I noticed a subtle change in my mother's expression. Her gaze towards me tinged with astonishment. My father's demeanor also darkened, his fists clenching and then relaxing. It was peculiar. Though I couldn't see Song Meow Meow's lips moving, I could distinctly hear her voice. It seemed I had stumbled upon her significant secret. It became clear why, since her arrival in our home, my family, who had always indulged me, seemed increasingly dissatisfied, as if they believed I was attempting to undermine her. When she poured water and deliberately scalded herself, my brother accused me of harboring a petty heart, suggesting that I couldn't tolerate her presence in our home and had intended to harm her. When I did not concede my competition spot to her, my mother reproached me for usurping her opportunity, claiming I lacked sibling affection. Despite her college entrance examination results being only sufficient for a vocational college while I was headed to Tsinghua or Peking University, my father blamed me for perpetually oppressing her, insisting that her mental strain was the reason for her poor performance. Consequently, she feigned a suicide attempt, and the entire family held me culpable. In the face of such unfounded accusations, I felt a rebellious spirit awaken within me, allowing myself to act on my whims, thereby solidifying the notion that I was envious and unable to accept her. My parents were heartbroken, my brother disappointed, and I found myself drifting further from my family. Song Cici seized the opportunity to grow closer to them and to the outside world. She became the beloved Miss Su, while I, the legitimate daughter, transformed into an imposter. She leveraged her false reputation to marry into wealth, and amidst my sorrow, I retreated to a distant land. When the earthquake struck, I was trapped underground, initially believing I was destined to rest eternally beneath the soil. Little did I know my parents and brother traversed great distances, disregarding aftershocks, exhausting all resources in their rescue efforts. I was ultimately saved, but barely clinging to life. As death approached, gazing upon the tear-streaked familiar faces before me, my mind remained unusually lucid. I realized my error. My family did not love me any less than they loved Song Meow Meow. They loved me deeply. Regrettably, I comprehended this far too late. With a heart full of remorse, I closed my eyes, fervently wishing for another chance to rectify the foolish mistakes I had made. Recalling the regrets of my past life, a pang of pain shot through my heart, my eyes moistening, yet I couldn't help but feel a flicker of joy. Fortunately, I now had the opportunity to amend the regrets of my previous existence. In this life, I would not tread the same path again. Understanding this, I readily agreed. The voice of Song Meow Meow echoed once more. My cousin's outward agreement seemed effortless, yet inside, she must have resented my arrival. If she were to bully me, I must endure, so as not to cause distress to aunt and uncle. My mother, filled with compassion, embraced her, gently murmuring, "Meow Meow, from now on, this will be your home. You need not feel constrained. Share anything with us." She then shot me a warning glance, signaling me to behave. My father added kindly, "Meow Meow, your cousin and brother are both good children, and they warmly welcome you into our home." After this, he exchanged knowing looks with my brother and me, encouraging us to extend our own words of welcome. My brother, grasping the hint, was about to speak when I preempted him. "Meow Meow, Having you stay with us makes both me and Suhan very happy. It's livelier with more people around. My mother exhaled in relief, and my father's gaze towards me radiated approval. My brother beamed with delight, looking at me with pride. Only in Song Miao Miao's eyes did I catch a glimmer of disappointment, as if her anticipated plan had not materialized. I absorbed her disappointment, a cold smirk forming within me, while my outward demeanor remained increasingly effusive. Miao Miao, you always used to linger in my room whenever you visited. So this time, you can stay in my room and I'll take the guest room. In my previous life, Song Miao Miao had used her inability to sleep well in unfamiliar surroundings as an excuse to share my room. I had been unwilling to cohabit with her, leading to a fierce argument. She had reluctantly taken the guest room, yet after 3 consecutive nights of night terrors and screams, she had frightened herself to the point of resembling a ghost. My parents, left with no choice, attempted to persuade me to share a room with her. I felt my parents were biased, resulting in a fierce dispute, and I packed my bag to leave home. My father chased after me but was struck by a car in his haste. Though he survived, he sustained a leg injury that left him disabled. In this life, I wished to prevent any more misfortunes for my father and had no desire to share a room with Song Miao Miao. Thus, I proactively offered my room to her, eager to see if she could indeed stay there this time.
No.
As soon as my words fell, my father promptly opposed. Our home has so many rooms. There is no need for you to give up yours. My brother quickly added, if cousin doesn't like the guest room, she can stay in my room. My mother, gently stroking my head, spoke tenderly. Susu, I'm very pleased that you're willing to give your room to Miao Miao. However, it has been your room for many years. How can you so easily relinquish it? She turned to Song Miao Miao, suggesting softly, Miao Miao, since you like Susu's room, how about I arrange a separate one for you? Your cousin has lived in hers for several years, and she has grown accustomed to it. Song Miao Miao had consistently maintained a well-behaved facade before my mother, so she had no choice but to nod in agreement. Yet, in her heart, she secretly mused, cousin is a master of deception. She clearly dislikes me. So how could she willingly offer her room? It seemed she was willing to deceive aunt and uncle, who so favored her. My mother's smile faltered. Her gaze towards me now laced with complexity. Her mouth opened and closed again before she finally spoke. Susu, how about we let Miao Miao stay with you for one night? My mother did not believe I would bully Song Miao Miao, yet her unspoken thoughts were clear, and thus she tested me. I understood her intentions. She did not wish for me to be seen as a hypocritical daughter who could not accept an orphan. Nor did she want Song Cici to be perceived as a despicable niece capable of fabricating her own sentiments. Regrettably, some individuals perceive you as family, while you merely serve as a stepping stone for them. Without hesitation, I nodded. Sure. My brother immediately protested. Mom, my sister is in her final year of high school and has always slept lightly. If Miao Miao stays with my sister, it will disturb her rest. It's better for Miao Miao to occupy my room. My father, silent, furrowed his brow, glancing between Song Miao Miao and me, seemingly in thought. Song Miao Miao grew anxious, her internal monologue erupting. I fear I will disappoint aunt's goodwill. When alone, my cousin always bullies me. The last time I stayed with her, she deliberately kicked me off the bed 3 times, claiming she was dreaming. If I stay with her again, who knows how many times I will be kicked in one night. It was common knowledge that I kicked in my sleep. This was something the entire family knew. The pinnacle of deceit lies in half-truths, and Song Miao Miao was adept at this. My mother frowned, her earlier doubts resurfacing. My father's face flickered with a hint of guilt, realizing he might have been overly suspicious and that he should not overthink Song Miao Miao. My brother scratched his head, looking bewildered. I silently scoffed. No wonder I had suffered such a crushing defeat in my past life. With such eloquence, who could withstand it? Sincerity is indeed a lethal weapon. Thus, I feigned innocence and asked her, Miao Miao, why are you silent? Are you unwilling to stay with me? Worried that I might kick you in my sleep? Song Miao Miao opened her mouth, wanting to shake her head, but her earlier thoughts compelled her to nod, which contradicted her well-mannered persona. She could only offer a forced smile, looking at me with a troubled expression. I pouted in dissatisfaction, grasping her hand in a pitiful manner. I've always wanted to have a heart-to-heart with you. Then, with a show of understanding, I added, but if you don't wish to share a room with me, I cannot force you. I feigned disappointment and despair, as if saddened by her rejection. I ascended the stairs to study. Though my words had been bold, my steps felt unusually heavy. The setting sun stretched my shadow long, emanating a profound sense of solitude and loss. Regardless of the impact my solitary figure may have on my family, once I closed the door, I flung myself onto the bed, rolling about in amusement. The image of Song Miao Miao's frustrated expression lingered in my mind, and I couldn't help but chuckle. No wonder she relished playing the innocent victim, leaving her adversaries at a loss for words. It was exhilarating, especially when I ascended the stairs. My father's voice rang out behind me. Miao Miao will stay in the guest room. I'll have a room arranged for her just like Susu's. Walking the path of the innocent, she would make it impossible for the innocent to find refuge. Having suffered defeat at her first attempt, Song Miao Miao was unwilling to concede so easily. Before long, she began her antics anew. As I immersed myself in my studies, oblivious to the world around me, Song Miao Miao knocked on the door, entering with a water cup in hand. "A cousin, you've been studying for so long. You should drink some water." I shot her an annoyed glance, interrupting my train of thought. "Don't disturb my studies. Leave." Undeterred, she ignored my protest and approached with the cup, insisting on handing it to me. I refused to take it, and in her attempt to balance it, the water spilled onto her hand, scalding her. She dropped the cup with a crash, her scream echoing through the room. Su Han was the first to rush in. "Sister, are you alright?" Before I could respond, I heard Song Miao Miao's internal monologue. "My cousin is perfectly fine. It's me who has hurt. She deliberately spilled the cup on me. And now my hand is like this. Why can't my cousin see it? Is it because I'm only her cousin, not her sister? It's so heartbreaking. Why isn't my cousin my real sister?" Su Han hesitated momentarily, then awkwardly turned to Song Miao Miao, glancing back at me with an expression of naive innocence. "Sister, did you bully Miao Miao?" Behold, the result of Song Miao Miao's incessant insinuations. Even if Su Han didn't believe I would bully her, she still instinctively asked. I felt a surge of annoyance but maintained an outward calm, smiling benignly at Song Miao Miao. She appeared startled, her body trembling slightly as she whispered, "Hanin, my cousin didn't bully me." Her voice quivered, as if she were under threat. She would have been better off admitting I bullied her. As she spoke, she raised her slightly reddened hand, her face pale with pain, tears cascading down her porcelain skin, creating a scene of heart-wrenching beauty. In my past life, she had donned this pitiful guise, evoking Su Han's sympathy and my family's prejudice against me, painting me as the heartless one who tormented the lonely girl. Subsequently, she went to great lengths to tarnish my reputation, leading my family to grow increasingly disappointed in me, their true sister. This time, however, I would not allow her to succeed. As concern flickered in Su Han's eyes, I suddenly reached out and grasped Song Miao Miao's injured arm. She instinctively recoiled and I, as delicate as a paper figure, fell to the ground. My palm landed on shards of glass, and blood gushed forth. Song Miao Miao was momentarily stunned. Suan, disregarding her own feelings for Miao Miao, hurriedly pulled me up, her gaze fixed on my bleeding wound, her face contorted in worry. She shot a disapproving glare at Song Miao Miao, her tone sharp. "What is Miao Miao doing? My sister was merely concerned about your injury." This time, the tables had turned, and it was Song Miao Miao who found herself at a loss for words. Soon, my parents arrived upon hearing the commotion. Compared to the reddened skin on Song Miao Miao's hand, my gory wound drew far more attention. My father rushed over, inspecting my injury with evident concern. "Susu, how did you get hurt like this?" With a faint smile, I attempted to reassure him. "Dad, don't worry. It looks worse than it is. It's just a superficial wound." I then turned to my mother, who had hastily fetched a first aid kit, and added, "Please don't blame Miao Miao. I accidentally fell." I gasped as if in great pain. Su Han muttered in discontent. "Clearly, it was Miao Miao who caused this. Why are you defending her?" My father furrowed his brow, his displeasure evident, but he refrained from voicing it for my mother's sake. She silently regarded Song Miao Miao before opening the first aid kit, gingerly tending to my wound. Without the usual concern for her, Song Miao Miao sensed the unspoken rejection and felt a pang of anxiety. Her deceitful tactics had become adept. She had managed to convince my cousin to speak on her behalf, despite being the one who had deliberately caused her fall. "Ah, I understood that my cousin was merely struggling to accept my presence, having been the sole daughter in the family before my arrival. My mother hesitated momentarily, while treating my wound. Although my father's expression remained largely unchanged, his gaze inadvertently flicked to me. I retracted my arm, gritting my teeth against the pain, playing the role of the caring sister. I can endure this little injury. Let us treat Meow Meow's burn first. She was just scalded by hot water. My mother promptly took the burn ointment to treat Song Meow Meow, but found no place to apply it. Anger simmered in her eyes, which she struggled to suppress. Song Meow Meow's hand bore almost no trace of the burn, save for a faint redness that hinted at its recent encounter with hot water. In that moment, the truth was self-evident. Song Meow Meow had lost once more, not because of my actions, but due to her lack of resolve. The art of feigned injury requires a certain sacrifice. One must be willing to endure pain to manipulate effectively. Unfortunately, her previous victories had clouded her judgment, leading her to underestimate me. Even my father, a man of great composure, could not stifle a scoff, his expression stern yet gentle as he applied the ointment. My mother, striving to suppress her frustration, addressed Song Meow Meow. Why don't you go rest in the guest room? Reluctant to leave, she bit her lip, suppressing her tears, and nodded pathetically. As she turned to depart, she shot me a resentful glare. She left, filled with bitterness, unable to comprehend why her usual tactics had failed her this time. I watched her retreating figure, unable to suppress a cold smile. She remained unaware that her days of ease were numbered. With my presence, she could no longer rely on her mind games. Once she exited, my father frowned. Meow Meow seems to be harboring some heavy thoughts. Despite his efforts to maintain composure, his dissatisfaction with Song Meow Meow was evident. My mother opened her mouth as if to argue but ultimately fell silent, unable to deny my father's observation. My tense heartstrings finally began to loosen slightly. This life, in contrast to the previous one, showed signs of divergence. In my past life, I had been unable to perceive Song Meow Meow's thoughts and thus could not respond appropriately. On her first day in our home, my family had instantly felt compassion for her, while developing a distaste for me. Subsequently, she had leveraged her mind reading to manipulate and slander me, causing my family to view me as selfish and unworthy, gradually usurping my place until they favored her over me. However, this time around, she would not enjoy such fortune. After Song Meow Meow moved in, neither my parents nor Su Han had shown her the same warmth they had in my past life. She continued to attempt to displace me, vying for my family's affection. Yet I had already planted the seeds of prejudice against her, thwarting her success. I could sense her growing impatience. That night, I overheard her on the phone. Teacher, remember to call my aunt tomorrow and tell her that Susu took my spot in the math competition. As long as you convince my aunt of your words, I'll pay off your 200,000 debt. I keep my promises. The money doesn't concern me. What matters is replacing Susu as the heiress of the Su family. She no longer concealed her ambitions. At last, I understood why my mother had always believed I had usurped Song Meow Meow's competition spot in my previous life. She had teacher, backing her. Parents always tend to trust teachers more than their own children. Mr. He's phone call is worth 200,000. Indeed, earning such money seems remarkably effortless. The following day, upon returning from school, I found my mother sitting on the sofa with a stern expression awaiting my arrival. Susu, you have greatly disappointed me. How could you seize Meow Meow's place in the mathematics competition? My mother lamented, her eyes brimming with disappointment. To her, character always took precedence over grades. I noticed a fleeting glimmer of amusement in Song Meow Meow's eyes, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. The next moment, with reddened eyes, she began to explain, Auntie, my cousin did not take my spot in the math competition. It's a misunderstanding. Yet, internally, she performed a heartbreaking soliloquy. My parents are no longer here, and I must now be fostered by my aunt. What is one spot in a math competition compared to that? If my cousin has taken it, so be it. I cannot let my aunt and cousin fall into discord because of me. My aunt is already burdened with her business. My mother's gaze softened as she looked at Song Meow Meow, then turned to command me, Susu, you must return the competition spot to Meow Meow tomorrow. My mother had made the same demand in my previous life. At that time, I had been infuriated, arguing vehemently with her, feeling that she had blindly trusted Meow Meow's words without investigation, showing undue favoritism. I demanded that she call Mr. He to verify the facts. Seeing my anger, my mother did indeed call Mr. He. It was easy to predict what he would say. Consequently, I became, in my mother's eyes, the liar Meow Meow claimed I was. Confrontation proved to be a futile strategy. Instead, employing gentleness to counter rigidity was the superior approach. I pinched my thigh forcefully, causing tears to well up in my eyes, portraying the image of a wounded child. Suppressing my tears, I retrieved a piece of paper from my backpack and tossed it onto the coffee table before my mother. Mother, here are my grades from the past year. With my perfect score in mathematics, is there truly a need to take Meow Meow's competition spot? Aware that Meow Meow had sought Mr. He's endorsement, I knew I needed to present evidence more compelling than his. This paper not only contained my grades, but also bore the signatures of my homeroom teacher and the academic director. Compared to a competition teacher, these two were of far greater significance. I felt as though my mother's distrust had struck me deeply, and the tears I had been holding back finally fell. My father, who had been observing quietly, could no longer restrain himself and gently wiped my tears away with his warm fingertip, filled with concern. Darling, I told you Sususu wouldn't do such a thing, but you wouldn't believe me. Now look, you've upset our daughter. My father, rarely critical of my mother, took my nearly shattered self upstairs, completely ignoring Meow Meow's silent lament behind us. Cousin is lying again. Her report card is fake, she thought, desperately trying to undermine me with her inner voice, unaware that her words only solidified her own deceitful nature. Meow Meow watched us leave with a look of unwillingness, only to be reprimanded by my mother. Meow Meow, I understand that you feel insecure after losing your parents and coming to live with us. However, please refrain from any underhanded tactics. I am your only blood relative and bear the responsibility of your upbringing. I will not abandon you. My mother pursued us with the report card in hand, repeatedly apologizing. Sususu, it is my fault. I should not have believed in one-sided accounts. Please do not be angry with me. I promise to listen more fairly in the future. Originally, I was merely pretending to cry, but upon hearing my mother's apology, a wave of emotion surged through me, and uncontrollable pain filled my eyes, my tears cascading down. Mother, do you know how long I have waited to hear those words from you? Across the span of time, it has been 2 lifetimes. My genuine sorrow poured forth, deepening my mother's guilt and my father's concern. They enveloped me as we ascended the stairs, not once glancing back at Meow Meow, who stood alone in the hall, her face pale and expression vacant, reminiscent of an abandoned child, just as I had been in my previous life. She could not fathom why her inner voice held no sway over my parents anymore. Why had her attempts to sabotage me become so exceedingly difficult? From that day forth, Meow Meow became significantly more subdued, harboring a hint of trepidation towards me, no longer daring to casually undermine me in front of family. Occasionally, when she attempted to sow discord, the family's first reaction was to doubt her, rather than to believe her as they had in the past. This was sufficient for me. I understood that completely expelling Meow Meow from my life would not be an easy task, especially since she was an orphan with only my mother as her blood relative. However, the mere suspicion cast upon her voice was enough to leave her dumbfounded. Despite her relentless efforts to tarnish my reputation, it only endeared me further to my family. This infuriated her to the point of nearly spitting blood. I overheard her lamenting in her thoughts about my parents and Suhan being unable to recognize true worth. Convinced that she was more perceptive, more considerate, and more charming than I, yet still failing to earn their affection in place of mine. Thus she, like in the previous life, resolved to gamble her youth for her future, preparing a grand scheme to obliterate me. During the college entrance examination, she deliberately performed dismally. Initially, she had a chance to secure a place in an ordinary university, but she achieved a score so low it was barely sufficient for even a mediocre college. Such a poor performance left my mother, who usually paid little attention to grades, in a state of shock, while my father quickly supported her to steady her shaken form. It was no wonder she found it hard to accept. After all, Meow Meow was her only remaining family. Although Meow Meow had plotted several times to entrap me, in my mother's eyes, she was merely a girl lacking security, seeking to gain her attention. Her actions were not perceived as heinous. Over 2 lifetimes, my mother had always been her staunchest protector. Now, upon witnessing such dismal results, my mother felt as though she had let down her deceased brother and sister-in-law. While my father bore no fondness for Meow Meow, he was sympathetic towards my mother. He, suppressing his impatience, suggested, Meow Meow, this score seems less than ideal. Perhaps I should arrange for you to repeat a year? Ever since the results were revealed, Meow Meow had adopted a demeanor of shame, lowering her head as if too embarrassed to face anyone. Upon hearing my father's suggestion, tears streamed down her face, as if they were without price. To an outsider, it would seem she had suffered immense mistreatment in our household. Thank you, uncle, but it's unnecessary, she replied, her heart racing far more smoothly than her words. What use is repeating a year? Under my cousin's oppression, even if I repeated 100 years, I could not achieve good results. Sigh. The psychologist said I've been bullied for so long that I'm now depressed. Merely adjusting my mindset has drained all my energy. How could I possibly focus on studying? I realized I could not let my aunt and the others see the diagnosis for depression in my bag. I must find an opportunity to tear it up and ensure they would not worry about me. Now it made sense why in my previous life, my father had discovered the diagnosis in her backpack. She had blamed me for her declining grades, claiming I had bullied her. In reality, it was merely Meow Meow who had purchased the diagnosis with money. When I informed my family of this, they dismissed my claims as lies. Such baseless accusations led to a fierce quarrel with my father and heated arguments with my mother and brother, driving a wedge between us. This time, I would not fall for her tricks again. I lowered my eyelids, concealing the coldness in my gaze. At that moment, the silence was deafening. My father had lost trust in her and did not follow the guidance of her inner voice to retrieve the diagnosis from her backpack. My mother and brother regarded her with complex expressions, choosing silence. This time, it was she who found herself isolated and disbelieved. In the midst of this eerie silence, I calmly suggested, what if I negotiate with Qingbei University to see if they might consider accepting Meow Meow as a package deal? This time, my college entrance examination results surpassed those of my previous life, yielding a provincial top rank. Thus, my proposal could hardly be deemed insincere. In my previous life, my family was taken aback by Song Meow Meow's diagnosis of depression. After a heated argument, they proposed a solution that favored her. At that moment, my resentment towards their bias was profound. How could I possibly accept it? This led to a tumultuous outburst, and in a fit of rage, I stormed out and journeyed to the capital alone. Henceforth, as Meow Meow desired, I became a shadow in my family, relinquishing the resources of the Su family to her. Such folly. In this life, I have taken the initiative to act first and am eager to see how Song Meow Meow will respond to this maneuver. My younger brother, brimming with youthful righteousness, naturally disapproves of such corruption, especially without the previous life's favoritism clouding his judgment. He was the first to voice his dissent. Sister, this isn't a supermarket promotion. What are you doing with this buy one get one free nonsense? It is exceedingly unfair to the other diligent students. He then turned to the dejected Song Meow Meow, who was unable to conceal her expression, and said, Cousin, you wouldn't agree to this, would you? With a bite of her lip, Meow Meow managed to utter 3 words, I won't. Her voice was as harsh and grating as a rusty scythe scraping against stone. As her only relative, her mother, having regained her composure, gently patted her head and said, Then let's heed your uncle's arrangement. Meow Meow, you shall repeat a year, all right? Failing to provoke a conflict between me and my family as she had hoped, she was instead left to repeat a year. In a surge of sorrow and disappointment, she burst into tears, covering her face as she rushed upstairs, her figure vanishing like a whirlwind. We were left in stunned silence, exchanging glances. After a while, my brother shrugged, Not my problem. I merely spoke the truth. If she is allowed to be carried in by you, it would not bode well for you either. Indeed, it would not. In my previous life, Meow Meow had deliberately sabotaged my chances of entering Tsinghua and Peking University by instructing her little minion to spread disinformation online, obscuring her own identity while inciting a wave of online harassment against me. Netizens accused me of breaking the rules and being arrogant about my talents, which cast a shadow over both prestigious universities. Fortunately, my abilities prevailed, and I was accepted into the university of my dreams. In a fit of anger, a disgruntled failed examinee, armed with sulfuric acid, lurked near my home, intending to disfigure me. Thankfully, I was vigilant enough to evade the attack. Reflecting on Meow Meow's malice in my past life, I felt no sympathy as I watched her retreating form, weeping. She was a venomous serpent, and any softness on my part would lead to my own demise. My mother shot my brother a disapproving glare, exclaiming, "You talk too much." With a sigh, she, unwilling to part with Meow Meow, pursued her upstairs. Meow Meow's door was firmly shut. She did not respond to her mother's gentle calls. A thought crossed my mind, recalling how, in my previous life, Meow Meow attempted suicide by wrist cutting. That time, I had erupted at her in a panic after nearly being disfigured myself, unleashing my terror upon her with harsh words. Little did I know, her heart was as fragile as glass, and my harsh reprimand drove her to self-harm. Of course, she did not perish. The wound was shallow enough to heal before she even reached the hospital. However, it succeeded in frightening my parents and Su-han. They blamed me for being too harsh and hurting Meow Meow. Time and again, her schemes had widened the rift between my family and me until it became irreparable. In this life, my preemptive strikes have thwarted her attempts to sow discord between me and my family, even diminishing the affection of her mother, who had always favored her. Now, as she seeks to reclaim the family's affection, she will need to resort to more drastic measures. Just as I began to clarify my thoughts, a piercing scream from my mother echoed from upstairs. Meow Meow. This time, Song Meow Meow did not feign distress as she had in the past. Her actions were severe, cutting deeply enough to warrant hospitalization. My mother, engulfed in regret, felt she had failed her brother's dying wish and remained by Meow Meow's bedside, unwavering. My father reflected on whether he had been too stern with Meow Meow and, in a moment of compassion, joined my mother at the hospital. Su-han felt that his previous words had been the final straw, leaving him engulfed in guilt towards Meow Meow. And he too spent time at the hospital whenever he was free. What could I do? As her understanding cousin, I could only occasionally check on her. The pain she felt was mine to bear as well. Naturally, my melodramatic cousin played the part of the injured party, evoking sympathy in others. For a time, our household seemed to exist in a peculiar harmony. Once Meow Meow recovered and was discharged, she became the darling of the family, prioritized in all matters. Initially, she exercised self-restraint, but soon her authentic nature emerged, much like a peacock displaying its plumage. She inundated social media with posts, each detailing how my parents and Su-han doted on her, showering her with gifts. As for me, her cousin, I was deemed unworthy of appearing in her online narrative. Not only was I excluded, but I also became an object of her bragging rights, much like in the previous life, where she reveled in overshadowing me with her tales of parental favoritism. She lurked in the shadows, envious of my happiness, employing such base tactics to stoke my animosity towards her while feigning weakness and victimhood in front of my parents and Su-han. In my past life, I had fallen victim to her schemes, but this time, her tactics would not ensnare me again. Let her revel in her fleeting triumph. The higher she climbs, the harder she will fall. If she does not experience the sweetness of success, how can she ever overreach? Thus, I graciously accepted her ostentation, occasionally offering my concurrence. Meow Meow was thoroughly pleased, believing that even I had succumbed to her charm. Disposing of a cousin who had surrendered to her allure would be an effortless task for her. My graduation banquet was scheduled for late August. Due to Meow Meow's wrist-cutting incident, fearing it might trigger her, the event was postponed repeatedly. Initially, my mother had no intention of hosting it. She discussed it with me, suggesting that perhaps we should forego the celebration considering Meow Meow's unstable mental state. While I understood that my mother loved me, hearing her say such things stung my heart. I looked into her eyes and asked, "Mother, does this mean that my significant milestones in life will be cancelled to accommodate Meow Meow's feelings?" My mother's expression shifted, her gaze faltering as she avoided eye contact, stammering, "No, it's just that she has recently attempted suicide," so she trailed off, realizing how unreasonable her request truly was. Naturally, my father opposed the cancellation of my graduation banquet. The celebration for the provincial top scholar was a splendid occasion. Not only would it bring him prestige, but it would also serve as free advertising for his business. With my father's insistence and my sense of loss, my mother eventually agreed to host the banquet. When she consulted with Meow Meow about the event, she wore a face of understanding, saying, "Cousin is the provincial top scholar. Such a momentous occasion certainly warrants a celebration. Aunt needn't you worry about me feeling disheartened over my own results. I will repeat the year and strive to follow my cousin's example." Yet beneath her words lay a darker truth. I am terrified of being asked about my score at the banquet. I feel utterly useless for having scored so low. If only I had cut deeper during my previous attempt, perhaps I wouldn't have to face this humiliation. I want to die, but I cannot bear to leave Aunt, who has been so kind to me. If I were to die, it would surely break her heart. Though she longed for death, she feigned a facade of strength and resilience, drawing tears from my mother, who embraced her tightly. Meow meow, your health is not yet restored. If you do not wish to come downstairs for the banquet, you may rest upstairs. Meow meow, nestled in my mother's arms, seemed momentarily taken aback. It appeared she had not anticipated that my mother would not cancel my graduation banquet as she had hoped, but instead suggested she avoid it.
All right,
she replied, suppressing her dissatisfaction and complying. However, I noticed a glimmer of coldness in her eyes, indicating her insatiable desire for more. Her ambition stirred anew, and thus, she prepared to unleash her ultimate scheme. On the day of the graduation banquet, the atmosphere was rife with clinking glasses and mingling guests. Song Meow Meow did not confine herself to her room. Instead, she adorned herself splendidly to attend my graduation banquet. Having always aspired to marry into a wealthy family, how could she possibly forego such an opportunity? Like a delicate butterfly flitting through the gathering, she remained oblivious to the fact that her excessive embellishment and overzealous vivacity struck others as particularly incongruous. It was I who was meant to be the center of attention today, yet she seemed intent on overshadowing me. Such behavior is indeed a grave misstep in social circles. The matriarch of a wealthy family may not possess extraordinary intelligence, but she must never be as foolish as Meow Meow. Of course, her folly extends far beyond this. When my mother could no longer contain herself and approached Meow Meow, hoping to curb her ostentation, Meow Meow suddenly pointed at the slit of my mother's cheongsam and exclaimed, "Auntie, your stockings are torn." The guests, following her gesture, discovered a substantial hole in my mother's stockings. In such a context, it was undeniably embarrassing for my mother, as the hostess, to face such a predicament. Instantly, her face flushed crimson, and she felt a desire to vanish into the ground. She inwardly resented Meow Meow for not discreetly alerting her. Unbeknownst to her, Meow Meow's thoughts echoed again. I saw my cousin yesterday, one hand holding stockings and the other wielding scissors in Annie's dressing room. Surely, she wouldn't have cut Auntie's stockings, would she? No, I mustn't entertain such thoughts. I cannot presume that my cousin would deliberately seek to humiliate my aunt out of jealousy for my aunt's preference for me. At that moment, my father descended the stairs with a thunderous expression. Upon seeing him, Meow Meow began again. Uncle's face looks so grim. Has he discovered that my cousin tampered with his computer? Alas, my cousin has truly become increasingly outrageous. Uncle's computer contains numerous confidential company documents, and it should not be trifled with. If any files were to be inadvertently deleted, the consequences would be dire. At last, my father could no longer tolerate her musings and coldly reprimanded her. Song Meow Meow, be silent. Stunned, Meow Meow could not comprehend why my father scolded her. In her calculations, it should have been I who received the reprimand. My younger brother, following closely behind my father, cast a disapproving glance in her direction, his eyes radiating subtle disdain. My mother, momentarily setting aside her own burgeoning jealousy, approached my father and gently tugged at his sleeve, whispering, "What is this?" Clearly, it is Susu. Recalling how Meow Meow had repeatedly schemed against me, she found it difficult to trust that Meow Meow's thoughts were sincere. Indeed, my father interrupted her, stating, "What's Susu?" It was Meow Meow who deliberately framed Susu. My brother clarified for my mother, during the upgrade of our home surveillance system, Dad covered the study and Auntie's dressing room. The footage shows Meow Meow sneaking into the study to delete Dad's files and then slipping into your dressing room to cut your stockings. It was she who committed these acts. Yet she has the audacity to blame her sister. The upgrade of the surveillance system had indeed been my suggestion. I had always remembered from the first day of my rebirth the thoughts Meow Meow had voiced about me cutting my mother's stockings and deleting my father's files. This incident had occurred, but the perpetrator was not I. It was Meow Meow. From a young age, Meow Meow had longed to supplant me as my parents' daughter. Back when my uncle and aunt were alive, she would visit our home and, in her envy of my closet full of princess dresses and my beautiful playroom, whimsically expressed her desire to become their daughter, suggesting they exchange daughters with her parents. Her innocent words elicited laughter from the adults, who dismissed her as merely jesting. My uncle had teased her, "If you wish to be your aunt's daughter, It's only if they don't favor your cousin. Just a playful quip. Yet she took it to heart. To make my parents dislike me, the young Meow Meow concocted a scheme to cut my mother's stockings and delete my father's files, framing me for her misdeeds. Naturally, I denied it vehemently, crying loudly and insisting that it was not I, seeing me in such distress. My parents reassured me of their belief in my innocence. Meow Meow's dream of exchanging parents was shattered. After my uncle's family suffered a tragic accident, leading to their demise, Meow Meow unexpectedly discovered that my family could hear her thoughts. Her childhood ambition to replace me resurfaced. She believed that with her newfound ability to voice her thoughts, she could make my family utterly despise me. In her previous life, she had easily succeeded. In this life, however, there was one more person privy to her thoughts, and thus her aspirations crumbled. Once she became the beloved of the entire family, her arrogance soared, and she became increasingly unruly. To prevent her from causing further mischief, I discreetly prompted my father to upgrade the surveillance system. As anticipated, it proved invaluable, capturing clear evidence of her deleting files and cutting stockings. No matter how eloquently she might spin her tales, she could not erase her own transgressions. The graduation banquet of the female scholar became embroiled in scandal, revealing that the niece of Madame Sue, a seemingly benevolent girl, was in fact a conniving, ungrateful wolf in sheep's clothing. Enjoying the comforts of the Sue family without any thought of gratitude, she instead sought to frame the eldest daughter of the Sue family in an attempt to usurp her position. The enmity of the affluent always captivates. In an instant, Meow Meow's notoriety eclipsed my achievements as the top scholar. Such an ungrateful wretch. How could my parents dare to allow her to remain in our home? My mother arranged for her to attend a fully enclosed repeat school, where she would remain until after the college entrance examinations. Upon taking her to the school, my mother sighed. Meow Meow, it's not that I do not wish to keep you at home, but rather that I cannot. If you choose to blame me for being heartless, then so be it. In the days that followed, Meow Meow begged, knelt, and even threatened to end her life. Yet my mother remained unmoved. At that point, she still refused to relent, attempting one final effort. Her cries were so intense that she was rendered speechless. Yet her thoughts conveyed clearly, I do not wish to harm my cousin. I merely envy her for having such wonderful parents like auntie and uncle. I desire a family with a father and mother. My mother abruptly interrupted her, her heart heavy with sorrow. Meow Meow, cease your inner lamentations. It has come to this. So, let us speak plainly. Do not attempt to manipulate us with your thoughts. We do not believe a word you say. Mind your own affairs. Although my mother spoke resolutely, Meow Meow's spirits plummeted once she entered the enclosed school. However, her melancholy was soon shattered. Meow Meow escaped. She vanished from the school without a trace. My mother searched extensively, but found no sign of her until 5 years later, when they unexpectedly reunited. By then, she was pregnant. The father of her child was a wealthy heir from her past life. In her previous life, she had been the wife of a wealthy heir. But in this life, she had become his mistress. My mother urged her to terminate the pregnancy and go abroad for further studies. But she coldly mocked my mother's feigned compassion, declaring that if she truly cared, she would have the wealthy heir divorce his wife and marry her. My mother finally felt utterly disillusioned and ceased to persuade her. The last news I heard of her was her death. It was said that she, emboldened by her pregnancy, confronted the wealthy heiress wife, demanding a divorce. Her words were so harsh that the legitimate wife, enraged, ran her over with a car, resulting in a tragic loss of 2 lives. Strikingly, her death coincided with the day of my demise in my previous life. Perhaps, in some cosmic sense, there is a reckoning. Yet, in this life, I anonymously sent several letters to the government, informing them of the time of the earthquake in my previous life. To my surprise, the government believed my words and took appropriate measures. When the earthquake struck, there were 0 casualties. Upon hearing that there were no casualties, I smiled. I believe this may be the true purpose of my rebirth, to save others and, in turn, save myself. May there be another version of me when the next disaster looms, rescuing countless souls from peril. The end. Thank you for listening. And until we meet again in the next story.